Very gently, using a little hammer and long thin nails, he nailed some boards across the door. The garage trembled as he worked. He told us to keep back. We stood in the wilderness staring, shaking our heads. He got some black gloss paint and wrote danger across the boards. He brought some Coke for us and some beer for himself, and we all sat against the house wall and stared at the garage.
"Better get it made safe, eh?" said Dad. "My uncle's a builder," said Coot. "Always doing garages and extensions and things." "Aye," said Dad. "He'd tell you knock the whole thing down and start again, aye? Aye, some folk fight to keep things that should have been smashed years back." I looked at the garage and imagined it gone. Saw the big emptiness that would take its place. "Aye," said Coot again. "He says the best jobs start with a massive sledgehammer and a massive skip." The blackbird flew onto the edge of the garage roof and perched there. I knew it would be watching the wilderness, looking for beetles and fat worms for its babies. "He wants us gone," I said. Coot cocked his finger and thumb like a gun. He eyed the bird as if he was aiming. "Gotcha," he said, and his hand recoiled as if he'd fired. Dad told Leaky and Coot it was good to see them again. "Michael's been moping," he said. "A good kickabout with his mates will be just what the doctor ordered." "Not against the garage, though," said Leaky. "Not against the blinking garage, no." We took the ball and went through the house into the front street again. Mina wasn't there. I played better now, but I couldn't help turning to the empty tree. I imagined her alone with Skellig in the dark house. I caught them laughing at me. "Missing her already?" said Coot. I raised my eyes and tried to grin. I went to sit on our front garden wall. "Who is she anyway?" said Leaky. I shrugged. "She's called Mina." "What school's she at?" "She doesn't go to school." They looked at me. "How's that?" said Leaky. "Plays the wag," said Coot. "Her mother teaches her," I said. They looked again. "Flaming hell," said Leaky. "I thought you had to go to school." "Imagine it," said Coot. They imagined it for a while. "Lucky sod," said Leaky. "What's she do for mates, though?" said Coot. "And who'd like to be stuck at home all day?" "They think schools stop you from learning," I said. "They think schools try to make everybody just the same." "That's rubbish," said Coot. "Aye," said Leaky. "You're learning all day long in school." I shrugged. "Maybe." "Is that why you've not been coming in?" said Leaky. "Is it because you're never coming back again? You're going to let that lass's mother teach you?" "Of course not," I said. "But they're going to teach me some things. Like muddling with clay and about William Blake." "Who's he?" said Coot. "That bloke that's got the butcher's shop in town." "He said schools drive all joy away," I said. "He was a painter and a poet." They looked at each other and grinned. Leaky couldn't look me in the eye. I could feel my face burning and burning. "Look," I said, "I can't tell you anything, but the world's full of amazing things." Coot sighed and shook his head and bounced the ball between his knees. "I've seen them," I've said. Leaky stared at me. I imagined taking him through the danger door, taking him to Skellig, showing him. For a moment I was dying to tell him what I'd seen and what I'd touched. "There she is," said Coot. We turned together and there was Mina climbing into the tree again. "The monkey girl," said Leaky. Coot giggled. "Hey," he said, "maybe Rasputin's right about that evolution stuff. He could come and look at her and see there's monkeys all around us still." Her eyes were cold as she stared down at me from the tree. Her voice was sarcastic and sing-song. "Thank God I was never sent to school to be flogged into following the style of a fool." "You know nothing about it," I said. "We don't get flogged and my friends aren't fools." "Ha!" "That's it," I said. "You know nothing about it. You think you're special, but you're just as ignorant as anybody. You might know about William Blake, but you know nothing about what ordinary people do." "Ha! Yes, ha!" I stared at my feet. I picked my fingernails. I kicked at the garden wall. "They hate me," she said. "I could see it in their eyes. They think I'm taking you away from them. They're stupid." "They're not stupid." "Stupid, kicking balls and jumping at each other and screeching like hyenas. Stupid. Yes, hyenas, you as well." "Hyenas? They think you're a monkey then." Her eyes glared and her face burned. See what I mean? They know nothing about me, but they hate me. And of course you know everything about them. I know enough. There's nothing to know. Kicking, screeching, being stupid. Ha! Yes, ha! And that little ginger one. Blake was little and ginger. How do you know that? See, you think nobody but you can know anything. No, I don't. Huh. Her lips were pressed tight together. She pressed her head back against the trunk of the tree.
Go home, she said. Go and play stupid football or something. Leave me alone. I gave the wall a last kick. Then I left her. I went into my front garden. I went through the open door. Dad shouted hello from somewhere upstairs. I went straight through into the wilderness and squatted there and squeezed my eyes tight to try and stop the tears. The owls woke me, or a call that was like that of the owls. I looked out into the night. The moon hung over the city, a great orange ball with the silhouettes of steeples and chimney stacks upon it. The sky was blue around it, deepening to blackness high above, where only the most brilliant stars shone. Down below, the wilderness was filled with the pitch-black shadow of the garage and a wedge of cold, silvery light.
I watched for the birds and saw nothing. Skellig, I whispered. Skellig, Skellig, Skellig. I cursed myself because in order to go to him now I had to rely on Mina. I lay in bed again. I moved between sleeping and waking.
I dreamt that Skellig entered the hospital ward, that he lifted the baby from her glass case. He pulled the tubes and wires from her. She reached up and touched his pale, dry skin with her little fingers, and she giggled. He took her away, flew with her in his arms through the darkest part of the sky. He landed with her in the wilderness and stood there calling to me, "Michael, Michael!" They stood there laughing. She bounced in his arms. They had lost all of their weakness and they were strong again. "Michael!" he called, and his eyes were shining with joy. "Michael! Michael! Michael!"
I woke up. I heard the owls again. I pulled on some jeans and a pullover and tiptoed downstairs and out into the wilderness. Nothing there, of course, just the image of them burning in my mind. I stood listening to the city all around, its low, deep, endless roar. I went out through the shadows into the back lane. Though I knew it was useless, I began to walk towards Mina's boarded house. Something brushed against me as I walked.
"Whisper," I whispered. The cat went with me, slinking at my side. The door into the garden was ajar. The moon had climbed. It hung directly over us. Behind the wall, the garden was flooded with its light. Mina was waiting. She sat on the step before the danger door, elbows resting on her knees, pale face resting on her hands. I hesitated, and we watched each other.
"What took you so long?" she said. I looked at her. "Thought I'd have to do this all alone," she said. "Thought that was what you wanted." The cat prowled to her side, brushed itself against her legs. "Oh, Michael," she said. I didn't know what to do. I sat on the steps below her. "We said stupid things," she said. "I said stupid things." I said nothing. An owl silently flew down into the garden and perched on the back wall. "Don't be angry. Be my friend," she whispered. "I am your friend." "It's possible to hate your friend. You hated me today. You hated me." The other owl descended and perched in silence beside its partner. "I love the night," said Mina. "Anything seems possible at night when the rest of the world has gone to sleep." I looked up at her silvery face, her ink-black eyes. I knew that in a dream I would see her as the moon with Skellig flying silently across her. I moved up to her side. "I'll be your friend," I whispered. She smiled and we sat there looking out at the moonlight. Soon the owls rose and headed for the centre of the city. We lay back together against the danger door. I felt myself falling into sleep. "Skellig," I hissed. "Skellig." We rubbed the sleep from our eyes. Mina pushed the key into the lock.
We had no torch. The light that came through the chinks in the boards was pale and weak. We blundered through the dark. We held hands and stretched our free hands out in front of us. We walked into the wall. We caught our toes on loose floorboards. We stumbled as we climbed the stairs. We shuffled across the first landing. We felt for the handle of the door to the room where we thought we'd left Skellig. We inched the door open. We whispered, "Skellig! Skellig!" No answer. We moved forward carefully, arms outstretched, feeling forward with our feet before we took each step. Our breath was fast, shallow, trembly. My heart was thundering. I opened my eyes wide, glared into the dark, seeking the shape of his body on the floor. Nothing there, just the blankets, the pillow, the plastic dish, the beer bottle rolling away from my stumbling feet. "Where is he?" whispered Mina. "Skellig," we whispered. "Skellig! Skellig!" We turned back to the landing again. We stumbled up the next flight of stairs. We opened many doors. We stared past them into pitch-black rooms. We whispered his name. We heard nothing but our own breath, our own uncertain feet, his name echoing back to us from bare floorboards and bare walls. We turned back to the landing again. We stumbled up the next flight of stairs. We halted. We gripped each other's hands. We felt each other, shuddering. Our heads were filled with the darkness of the house. Beside me was nothing but Mina's face, its silvery bloom. "We must be more calm," she whispered. "We must listen, like we listened to the squeaking of the blackbird chicks." "Yes," I said. "Stand still, do nothing. Listen to the deepest, deepest places of the dark." We held hands and listened to the night. We heard the endless din of the cracking of the house, our own breath. As I listened deeper, I heard the breathing of the baby deep inside me. I heard the far-off beating of her heart. I sighed, knowing that she was safe. "You hear?" said Mina. I listened, and it was as if she guided me to hear what she heard. It was like hearing the blackbird chicks cheeping in the nest. It came from above us, a far-off squeaking, whistling sound. Skellig's breathing. "I hear it," I whispered. We climbed the final flight of stairs towards the final doorway. Gently, fearfully, we turned the handle and slowly pushed open the door. Moonlight came through the arched window. Skellig sat before its frame, bowed forward. We saw the black silhouette of his pale face, of his bowed shoulders, of his wings folded upon his shoulders. At the base of his wings was the silhouette of his shredded shirt. He must have heard us as we stepped through the door, as we crouched together against the wall, but he didn't turn. We didn't speak. We didn't dare approach him. As we watched, an owl appeared, dropping on silent wings from the moonlit sky to the moonlit window. It perched on the frame. It bowed forward, opened its beak, laid something on the windowsill and flew out again. Skellig bent his head to where the bird had been. He pressed his lips to the windowsill. Then the owl, or the other owl, came again to the window, perched, opened its beak, flew off again. Skellig bent forward again. He chewed. "They're feeding him," whispered Mina. And it was true. Each time the owls left, Skellig lifted what they had left him. He chewed and swallowed. At last he turned to us. We saw nothing of his eyes, his pale cheeks, just his black silhouette against the glistening night. Mina and I held hands. Still we didn't dare go to him. "Come to me," he whispered. We didn't move. "Come to me." Mina tugged me, led me to him. We met him in the middle of the room. He stood erect. He seemed stronger than he'd ever been. He took my hand and Mina's hand, and we stood there, the three of us, linked in the moonlight on the old bare floorboards. He squeezed my hand as if to reassure me. When he smiled at me, I caught the stench of his breath, the stench of the things the owls had given him to eat. I gagged. His breath was the breath of an animal that lives on the meat of other living things, a dog, a fox, a blackbird, an owl. He squeezed me again and smiled again. He stepped sideways and we turned together, kept slowly turning as if we were carefully, nervously beginning to dance. The moonlight shone on our faces in turn. Each face spun from shadow to light, from shadow to light,
from shadow to light. And each time the faces of Mina and Skellig came into the light, they were more silvery, more expressionless. Their eyes were darker, more empty, more penetrating. For a moment I wanted to pull away from them to break the circle, but Skellig's hand tightened on mine. "Don't stop, Michael," he whispered. His eyes and Mina's eyes stared far into me. "No, Michael," said Mina, "don't stop." I didn't stop. I found that I was smiling, that Skellig and Mina were smiling too. My heart raced and thundered, and then it settled to a steady, rolling rhythm. I felt Skellig and Mina's hearts beating along with my own. I felt their breath in rhythm with mine. It was like we had moved into each other, as if we had become one thing. Our heads were dark then, were as huge and moonlit as the night. I couldn't feel the bare floorboards against my feet. All I knew were the hands in mine, the faces turning through the light and the dark, and for a moment I saw ghostly wings at Mina's back. I felt the feathers and delicate bones rising from my own shoulders, and I was lifted from the floor with Skellig and Mina.
We turned circles together through the empty air of that empty room, high in an old house in Crow Road.
Then it was over. I found myself crumpled on the floorboards alongside Mina. Skellig crouched beside us. He touched our heads. "Go home now," he squeaked. "But how are you like this now?" I asked. He pressed his finger to his lips. "The owls and the angels," he whispered. He raised his finger when we began to speak again. "Remember this night," he whispered. We tottered from the room. We descended the stairs. We went out through the danger door into the night. We hesitated for a moment. "Did it happen to you as well?" I whispered. "Yes, it happened to all of us." We laughed. I closed my eyes. I tried to feel again the feathers and bones of wings on my shoulders. I opened my eyes, tried to recall the ghostly wings rising at Mina's back. "It will happen again," said Mina, "won't it?" "Yes." We hurried homeward. At the entrance to the back lane we paused again to catch our breath. It was then that we heard Dad's voice calling, "Michael! Michael!" As we stood there, we saw him come out from the wilderness into the lane. His voice was filled with fear. "Michael! Oh, Michael!" Then he saw us standing there hand in hand. "Michael! Michael!" He ran and grabbed me in his arms. "We were sleepwalking," said Mina. "Yes," I said as he held me tight to keep me safe. I didn't know what I was doing. I was dreaming. I was sleepwalking.
Dr. Death faced me across the kitchen table. He touched my hand with his long curved fingers. I caught the scent of tobacco that surrounded him. I saw the black spots on his skin. Dad was telling him the story, my disappearance in the night, my sleepwalking.
I heard in his voice how scared he still was, how he thought he'd lost me. I wanted to tell him again that I was all right, everything was all right. I woke up and knew he was gone. Straight away, I knew he was gone. When you love somebody, you know these things. It's right, Dan, isn't it? Dr. Death tried to smile, but his eyes stayed stupid and cold. "And there was this girl with you?" he said. "Mina," said Dad. "She saw him from her window, sleepwalking in the night. She went to help him. That's true, isn't it, Michael?" I nodded. Dr. Death licked his lips. "Mina, she isn't one of mine," he said. "I wouldn't know her." He tried to smile again. "Sleepwalking," he said. He raised his eyebrows. "And this is true?" I stared at him. "Yes, this is true." He watched me. He was cold, dry, pale as death. Wings would never rise at his back.
"Let me look at you." I stood in front of him. He shone a tiny bright torch into my eyes and peered into me. He shone it into my ears. I felt his breath and his scent all over me. He lifted my shirt and pressed his stethoscope against my chest and listened to me. I felt his clammy hands on my skin. "What day is it?" he asked me. "What month is it? What's the name of the Prime Minister?"
Dad chewed his lips as he watched and listened. "Good lad," he murmured as I answered. Dr. Death touched my cheek. Is there anything you'd like to tell me? He asked. I shook my head. Don't be shy, he said. Me and your dad have been through everything you're going through. I shook my head again. He's a fit, healthy lad, he said. Just keep an eye on him. His mouth grinned as he looked at me. And make sure he stays in bed at night. He kept me close to him. It's a difficult time, he said. Everything inside you's changing. The world can seem a wild and weird place, but you'll get through it. Did you treat Ernie? I asked. He raised his eyebrows. Ernie Myers, the man who lived here before. Oh, said Dr. Death. Yes, Mr. Myers was one of mine. Did he talk about seeing things? Things? Strange things. In the garden. In the house. From the corner of my eye, I saw Dad chewing his lips again. Mr. Myers was very ill, said Dr. Death. He was dying. I know that. And as the mind approaches death, it changes. It becomes less orderly. So he did. He did speak of certain images that came to him, but so do many of my people. He held me again with his long fingers. I think you need to play football with your friends, he said. I think you need to go to school again. Too much inside the house. He tapped my head. Too much thinking and wondering and worrying going on in there. He stood up and Dad went with him to the door. I heard them muttering together in the hallway. School for you tomorrow, said Dad as he came back in. He was trying to be all brisk and efficient, but he pressed his lips together and looked at me, and I saw the scared look in his eye. I'm sorry, Dad, I whispered. We held each other tight, then we looked out at the wilderness. Why did you ask those things about Ernie? He said. Don't know, I said. Daft notions? It's true what you told us, that you were sleepwalking. For a moment I wanted to tell him everything. Skellig, the owls, what Mina and I got up to in the night. Then I knew how weird it would seem. Yes, I said, it's true, Dad.
I did go to school next day. Rasputin started his lesson by welcoming me back. He said I'd missed a lot, but he hoped I'd be able to catch up. I told him I'd been studying evolution and that I'd found out about the Archaeopteryx. He raised his eyebrows. Do you think there are things like the Archaeopteryx in the human world? I asked him. He peered at me. Humans that are turning into creatures that can fly, I said. I heard Coot sniggering behind me. Tell him about the monkey girl, he said. What's that? Said Rasputin. The monkey girl, said Coot.
I heard Leaky telling him to shut up. Maybe there's beings that's left over from the apes, said Coot. Monkey girls and monkey boys. I ignored him. Our bones would need to become pneumatized, I said. Rasputin came to me and tousled my hair. Wings might help as well, he said. But I can see you've been reading widely. Well done, Michael, and stop interrupting Coot. We all know who the monkey boy is here. Coot giggled. He grunted like an ape as Rasputin turned and went back to the front. He said we were past evolution now. We'd moved on to studying our own insides, the muscles, the heart and lungs, the digestive system, the nervous system, the brain. Keep coming to school, Michael, he said. You don't want to miss anything more. No, sir, I said.
He unrolled a long poster of a cutaway man, bright red lungs and heart exposed in his chest, stomach and intestines, networks of blood vessels and nerves, maroon muscles and white bones, blue-grey brain. He stared out at us through cavernous eyes. A few of the others shuddered in disgust. This is you, said Rasputin. Coot giggled. Rasputin called him to the front. He acted out stripping Coot's skin away, tearing open his chest. Yes, he said, inside we're all the same, no matter how horrible the outside may seem to be. This is what we would see were we to open up our Mr. Coot. He smiled. Of course, there may be a little more mess than appears in the picture.
Coot scuttled back to his desk. Now, said Rasputin, I'd like you to place your hand on the left side of your chest like this. Feel the beating of your heart. We felt our hearts. I knew how stupid it would be to tell Rasputin that I could feel two hearts, the baby's and my own. This is our engine, said Rasputin, beating day and night. when we're awake and when we're sleeping. We don't have to think about it. Mostly we're hardly aware that it's even there. But if it stopped... Coot squawked, as if he'd been strangled. Correct, Mr. Coot. Rasputin squawked too and flopped across his desk. I looked around. Half the class lay sprawled across their desks, pretending to be dead. Leaky was watching me. I could tell he wanted to be friends again.
In the yard that lunchtime, I played football as hard as I could. I did sliding tackles and diving headers. I dribbled and dummied and went for wild overhead kicks. I scored 4 goals, made 3 more, and my team won by miles. At the end, there was a long rip down the side of my jeans. The knuckles of my left hand were scratched and scraped. There was blood trickling from a little cut over my eye. The lads on my team surrounded me as we headed back inside. They said it was the best I'd ever played. They told me I should stop staying off. They needed me. Don't worry, said Leaky. He's really back this time, aren't you, Michael?
I wrote a story about a boy exploring some abandoned warehouses by the river. He finds an old stinking tramp who turns out to have wings growing from his great ancient coat. The boy feeds the man with sandwiches and chocolate, and the man becomes strong again. The boy has a friend called Kara. The man teaches the boy and Kara how it feels to fly, and then he disappears, flapping away across the water. I saw the tears in Miss Clark's eyes as she sat beside me and read the story. It's lovely, Michael, she said. Your style is really coming on. You've been practicing at home? I nodded. Good, she said. You have a true gift. Look after it. It was just after this that the secretary, Mrs. Moore, came in and whispered something to Miss Clark's. They both looked at me. Mrs. Moore asked me to go with her for a moment. I was trembling as I went to her. I put my hand on my chest and felt my heart. She led me through the long corridors towards her office.
My dad was on the phone, she said. He wanted a word with me. I chewed my lips as I lifted the handset. I heard him breathing, sighing.
It's the baby, I said. Yes, something's not right. I need to go in to sort things out. Something? A lot of things, son. They want to talk to me and your mum together. Not me. I talked to Mina's mum. You can have tea there. You can wait there till I come home. I'll not be long. You'll hardly know I've been away. Will the baby be all right? They think so. They hope so. Anyway, nothing will happen tonight. It's tomorrow they'll be doing it. I should have stayed at home. I should have kept thinking about her. I'll give her a kiss from you. And Mum. And Mum. You're very brave, Michael. No, I'm not, I thought, as I felt myself trembling. No, I'm blinking not.